This is the Knilly and PB podcast. In this weekly series, we are reading Twilight because I've never read it and PB wants to send memes. I'm Knilly.
I'm PB.
And today we're here to talk about our expectations for the first book, the whole series, and maybe a little bit about Stephanie Myers. This is right before we're pre-recording this, before I even read any of the book. Um, I will say, however, PB, I got to I downloaded it on my Kindle, right?
Yeah.
And I was just making sure I had all like it was right and all that. And I'm swiping through to get to like chapter one, that face, and not read it. But I stop at the dedication, which is very cute. It's her older sister in Twilight one, right? In the first
Yeah.
book, in Twilight. Sorry, the title is Twilight. And then it goes into, you know how like books have this little preface, and I laughed when I read this. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Genesis 2:17. I was like, this fucking thing starts with a Bible verse.
Welcome to Stephanie Meyer. Really, that should have been a huge thing that like all of us as children should have understood when we started reading this. But no one knew.
The way
Also,
I like laughed, gagged, because as a Catholic school kid, I just died reading this intro.
it's
And then it
like
goes into a preface, which I did not read, so I can't really comment on that. But
it's
um,
it's something we can get into here in a little bit. As you said, we'll talk a little bit about Stephanie Meyer and uh her author history, I guess.
yeah.
So we have a little bit more context when reading these books, especially as adults, because I, PP, have in fact read the series already. I read it when I was in high school, as I think a lot of people did. And I didn't know a lot about the author, and there was a lot of things in the books I was just like, that's weird, but I kind of just let it go because it's already a fantastical world, and I'm just like, sure, that's just another weird quirk. But now, with context and this sort of like new Twilight renaissance that we've been going through in social media, I've learned a lot about Stephanie Meyer, and I've learned a lot about the books, and a lot of connections I didn't think of as a wee 14 through 16-year-old.
Oh man, yeah. My relationship with the books in like high school and all of that was like I had a couple of friends that were reading it. It wasn't just like it wasn't actually as like popular, but I also went to a tiny school, so like five people reading it was like a lot of people. You know,
Hmm.
like my class was only like 100 kids.
Oh my god.
Yeah, the whole school was like 400. So
Jesus.
uh, yeah. So yeah, like five to 10 people reading it, that's like already 10% of my class, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but I had one friend who was just like avidly reading it and like so like would like uh it wouldn't be cosplay, but it's like the equivalent of like Disney bounding as like as much as you could in your uniform. Because I also like again, I went to a private school. So we had uniforms, but like would dress up in very like the books were carried around. We got the stickers, we got some binders, you know, we got all that like Lisa Frank-esque kind of vibe, but with Twilight stuff.
I love
um
that. I had friends, my bus friends, because I went to a large public school and I had to take the bus back home. And my bus friends were big into Twilight. They were big readers, so we would always talk about like the new YA series we were reading. And so we were all greatly anticipating Breaking Dawn because Eclipse had just come out when I started reading it, and really when Twilight started like going on the huge boom. So we were just like, when Breaking Dawn came out and we picked it up like the day of and we read it and we came back to school the next day, man, that bus ride was lit. We were just like, oh my God. And then this happened and this happened. Like, it was one of those moments you just, like, usually bus rides from like my neighborhood to the school were really long. But that day, really short. There was not enough time to discuss this fucking book. Because as we'll get to it, Breaking Dawn was like a huge thing for the series. So that's like my biggest memory because my core friend group wasn't reading the series. Um, they they were readers, but like more in like manga stuff. They were more in the anime realm of reading things as opposed to myself who was more into reading YA books and such.
Mm, yeah. I was reading like other books during the time, but I also, I think high school was a lot of internet, like, budding internet denizen up in
Yeah.
here. So like it's a mix of that and like gaming. I was and reading only because mostly I had to for school or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
remember if there was a book I read for leisure during high school, and I bet you I probably could if I looked at all of my books, be like, oh yeah, I read that during high school, but I couldn't like name something off to you now, off the top of my head. Um, because like I was like, oh, maybe like Aragorn, which is like kind of in the same realm of like, your wizarding books and your Twilights, like Aragon was in that. And but I think I read that like late middle school.
Yeah.
That was like a middle school read.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess
Like
it took
that
all
was
my
fun.
effort to read like Pride and Prejudice or something.
Oh yeah,
Frankenstein.
all your effort.
All
Oh
my
man.
effort.
You struggled so hard to read that
So
book. It was
I
so
love that
hard.
book. I struggled in the beginning and then I really liked it. I did read ahead too. Like, anyway, this is that. Maybe we should read that one next, Phoebe. That's for another time.
Yeah, then that's for a different discussion for
Different discussion.
pop by
Um,
make sure to pop by the stream afterwards.
yeah, for sure.
So,
Um,
starting on this, I want to ask you, as the
mhm,
resident, I haven't read this book yet, is
mhm.
what knowledge are you coming into this with? Like, what do you know already about Twilight and the Twilight Saga?
Okay, here's what I know. I originally thought there was only 3 books, but there's like 5. But I know that some of them are more recent than others, like
Hmm.
from, you know, mostly the more recent knowledge is coming from me having to purchase the books because any of the PDFs I would find were not cool, were not
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
So
yeah,
anyways, that's that knowledge. Edward Cullen Sparkles, Robert Pattinson hated it.
yeah. Uh huh. Uh huh.
Um, I don't know the name of the actor that plays Jacob, but he's the werewolf, and I put that in air quotes. And Bella is our main protagonist, and Anna Kendrick was in the movie for some reason or other. um, I know um, Vampire Sparkle. Um, eventually, there's a baby is involved.
Yeah.
um, and I mean, and the posters are very black and white. I also know that like I think technically 50 Shades was like a spin-off, was not a spin-off, but a fanfic of it that turned into its own book that was that separated itself from being a Twilight fic. Um,
Yes.
so that is like my knowledge of Twilight, yeah, and Edward Cullen's a vampire. I don't know if I mentioned that. And then there's all these other vampire things, and all of that. So that's my knowledge. And I guess it takes place in America somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know where. My guess is the Midwest.
I love that prediction. Obsessed with that.
Because that shit would not fly in New York. So, and if it takes place in New York, I'm gonna be like, that's fucking some upstate nonsense.
Some upstate nonsense. Oh, I can't wait for our first episode. I'm so excited now.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um,
to
yeah, go
continue
ahead.
on with that is what are you expecting to come out at the end of this with?
Um, I think so to my relation with pop culture, nerdy zeitgeist, and all that stuff is I actually like this is kind of like a little bit of a tangent, but like for example, like Star Wars, I didn't even really watch it until like the end, like nearing the end of college, and then most of my knowledge from Star Wars leading up until the point I read it, watched it was like
Mhm.
through osmosis and my friends making references and the internet, right? Because at that point in college, like the internet was, memes were growing. They were young and awkward, but they were things, and I absorbed references through that, right? Like I
Yeah.
knew the whole like so Han shot first or whatever before even watching. the movies, right? So
Yeah.
the way upon watching it in retrospect, like this is like the Star Wars example, it's like, oh, okay, like I don't think I would have liked it as much as like other people. I wouldn't have been like a super fan, but I enjoyed it. And I also would say probably older me looking back at younger me, younger me never would have been caught dead reading this book because it seemed cheesy as hell. And that's not like adult me is like, well, people just like what they like, and that's fine. It like
Yeah.
like I am me, even if I don't like it, I'll see this through to the end because like it's been such like I think adult me looking at the impact it has had on like my peers,
Mhm.
and more peers than I thought, especially
Yeah.
people that like read it like years later and love it anyway. I think I will have more of an appreciation for that. Whether I like it or not will is to be seen. But um like I can see myself liking it now on the fact that like it can be enjoyable to talk with my friends about it and get memes, right? Like
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah.
so in a mature way, I'm like, yeah, I'll consume it to have a cultural touchstone and because like I can't deny that it's such a like as much as like younger me in the beginning was like, this is never gonna like this is cringe as hell. I this is like corny AF. Like, oh my god, romance nonsense. Even though younger me was also like a fucking
Like, oh my
like
God, Mr.
a romantic.
Darcy.
Yeah, like yeah, I'm fucking reading Pride and Prejudice and like freaking like figuring out what my life would have been like back then, and it would have sucked first of all because now I also have knowledge of history, but that's a different topic
Yeah.
again. But like like yeah, I'm just like looking back and it would be like yeah, I want to it's nice to have be on the in and having to talk about with people. And I've also gradually learned to not poo poo others interests.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like I can't say I hate Twilight. I've never read it.
Yeah.
B a lot of my friends and circles enjoy it and enjoy it both for like unironic reasons and also ironic reasons, right? Like
Yeah.
you can still partake in something and even if it's ironically and it's still enjoyable. So yeah, it's something that I'm like, okay, yeah, I that's the only reason I can concede now. Younger me would not have conceded to reading this with you.
It's
But yeah,
okay.
that
I
that's what
I
I
got
that's
to
what I hope to get out of it. To be in the loop. What are Twilight fans called? Are they just called Twilight fans?
I know that there's a word for it. I can't remember it at the
Yeah.
time.
I guess we don't really have one for like Star Wars fans. They're just like Star Wars fans. Right. We have Trekkies though.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We'll figure out we'll note to selves, we'll look up the word later.
Yeah.
Like I don't think even like reading this now, I will become like that hardcore of a fan.
Mhm.
Um, but like I definitely can appreciate it for what it's worth. Also, I guess for Kanas, this is technically a young adult novel, right?
Yes, this is a YA
Okay.
novel.
Okay. So I also have to meet my expectations a little bit with reading. Like
Yes.
I know like part of it, especially like early college and late high school when people were talking about it, like, oh, the writing is so bad. But I'm like, also it's a young adult novel in retrospect.
Mhm.
Like some people are like, she can't write. But also she can write, but like it's like people love reading it. I also might be conflating this with the 50 Shades writer, but because they kind of cross so many paths. Because I heard that's also notoriously not written well.
I
But
don't think so.
yeah.
Well,
Um
in that same vein, like Twilight, as in like this like Petrushka doll of fan fictions, Twilight was also a fan fiction of Harry Potter. I
yeah.
believe it was supposed to be, I think it's a Hermione and Draco. I think it's a Dramoni fic it was supposed to be. I don't remember.
Whoa.
I didn't read it.
Whoa. I already love well, okay, never mind. I'm a fan. Cause I think that's toxic as hell and that's awesome.
Oh, you're gonna love Twilight then.
I truly did not know that until this very second.
Well, there you go. Oh, it's a fan fiction, which is why people make fun of 50 Shades because it's a fan fiction of a fan fiction.
That's kind of wild. I love that actually.
It's amazing. But that's probably another reason because also in the late 2000s, fan fiction in the mainstream was not viewed nearly as kindly as it is nowadays.
Yeah. Like
To
people are
con-
printing out and binding books of their favorite fan, which was awesome.
yeah, and technically illegal. And
I
so
know, but if you don't post about it, no one will know.
exactly. And continuing on, of like the four characters you know about Twilight, which one do you think is going to be your favorite, and which one do you think is going to be your least favorite?
I think my least favorite is probably going to still be Bella.
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah,
probably. I think just from like some of the like bits and pieces I've heard about like scenarios she's been in, it feels kind of just like a woe is me.
yeah,
um but again, this is all like from osmosis and hearsay, so I cannot
yeah,
confirm nor deny those facts. I think I have for some reason I think I might end up being on Team Jacob. That's just who I am.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, I kind of like where lichens and all that kind of stuff a little bit more than vampires in general and shapeshifters
Mhm.
in general. So not that vampires aren't on the list of like cool monsters that I like, and also like, and as part of like the TTRPG space that we both inhabit, and in fantasy that I enjoy vampires too as like a concept, but not as much as like transforming and werewolves and lichens and stuff. So I'm probably gonna be Team Jacob.
I look forward to finding this out, the
Yeah,
transformation of that opinion over the next 3 to 4 books.
yeah. No, and I'm excited to be proven wrong. Maybe Bella's not like the worst.
Who knows?
Who
To
knows?
to answer that question myself, because I also am curious, how this is gonna change, because 'cause I've heard, uh, new opinions as I've grown older, because I have never gone back to read the series, I've only read it once. So,
How long
I
ago was it? For context
when
for our listeners.
in t whenever whenever Breaking Dawn came out, I read each book once. So, I read, Twilight, New Moon, and Eclipse pretty much on the same day when Eclipse came out because it was on sale at Barnes and Nobles where I picked up Eclipse. Then later found out that there were 2 books ahead of that. So I had to go back and buy Twilight and New Moon. And then when Breaking Dawn came out, I read that one on the day of. So I had to be late 2000s,
Yeah, so
2009,
Eclipse came
10,
out 2007,
2007.
and then Breaking Dawn was 2008.
I had just started high school. That was my freshman year. I
I
was
It was August
14, 15.
2008, so you just finished your right. Oh no, that would be just starting. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of the
just start.
reverse. Yeah,
I
yeah,
quite
yeah,
literally had just started high school. I started in 2007. Um,
yeah.
and so, yeah, I was 14, 15. So probably however long ago that was.
Hmm.
That's when I read it. So I like so much as all of us, so much of my life has changed between then. But
Yeah.
my least favorite character is Renee, and my favorite character is Alice. Going into this, I'm looking forward to seeing how that changes, which
I
has
didn't
zero
even know
context to
those are
Nelly.
characters.
Yeah, you have, which is why I feel pretty happy to say those are my favorites and least favorites. Because you're just zero context. Whoosh.
That's it, all over the head. Oh man.
Um, and so in the same way of you having zero context of anything, thinking about the main 4 books, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn, which one, just based off of zero knowledge, you think is going to be your favorite, and which one do you think is going to be your least favorite?
Ooh. So there's 4 books in the main series,
Yes.
which is contrary to what I believed. I mean, I later found out there are 4. I had originally believed there were 3, but
Didn't we
um,
all?
yeah. I think I'm probably going to like the second one the most.
Okay.
That's my guess. Cause like in terms of like YA storytelling and all that kind of stuff, it's like the first
Mhm.
book is always just kind of like a little bit of setup, introduction of our characters, and then a small problem that's solved in the book, and then a bigger problem that leads into the series, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I like establishing characters, but I like development more. So like the third and fourth, maybe we're getting into like very big nitty gritty stuff, and like it maybe gets drawn out. So like the second
Yeah.
book, I feel like will be a sweet spot for me. Like um for example, back when I read Harry Potter, like the fourth book was my favorite. A, because of the Triwizard Tournament, but B, like that
Same
was like a
though,
good.
same.
Right. The Triwizard Tournament was all that book was for, which is perfect. And not the drama surrounding it. You just wanted to know what the tournament was. Like, give me
Yeah.
my tournament episodes in an anime. That's what that was for me.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And I don't know if we're gonna get one of those in this. I know, like it's like a there's like a little bit of a competing thing in terms of like relationship nonsense, but that's not quite like a
Yeah.
literal tournament.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if we're getting something like that in this book. I could be pleasantly surprised. And if not, that will probably be my favorite book, whatever that one is in. But I think like the second book will definitely establish it. Also, I notoriously did not like five, and actually, this is Harry Potter, and I never finished the books. Actually, I just watched the rest of the movies because I hated five.
It was such a bad book.
So yeah, so I don't want to like say that three or four will be my favorite because those are like late mid development, and like sometimes those are like this is where the hero has their rocky stuff. This is where they're making questionable choices and doing questionable things because they got to learn something. I'm like, and sometimes that makes me frustrated. I'm a very emphatic reader where I end up putting myself in that situation. And if I
Yeah.
feel myself doing that, I will die like on the inside. Like the
Yeah, yeah.
fact, like I could never imagine myself yelling in all caps like Harry did in freaking
Mhm.
five. So like
Yeah.
if Bella's doing some like for lack of a better term, cringy ass shit, I will cringe as hell too because I feel like it's for me. Like I feel like I'm doing it, and that will be like, oh god, I'm dying.
I think anyone who has read the series or is reading along with us is really going to enjoy that knowledge going throughout the series. I think they're really going to
Oh
enjoy that.
no, my doom.
And okay, so going through that, so you think that like Eclipse or the third or fourth book is going to be your least favorite?
Yeah, think the third book will be my least favorite. That's
I
my
like it.
guess. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'll also
Like,
give
cause
my tier
bookend
list.
like, yeah, bookends are nice, right? Because you have the beginning of
Yeah.
the story and the end of the story, and that's a nice way to wrap it all up. And so how we get there, that will be like, "Oh, yeah, this is so cool. This is awesome," or, uh, "Oh god, why?"
I actually have I got served on my Google News an article. I think it was a BuzzFeed article actually that rated the books from best to worst in their opinion. And I
Mm,
wildly disagreed with their layout, but I saved it anyways because I want to go back and refer to that after the
mhm,
fact and talk about it after we finish our four. But
mhm.
my rating, because I'm interested to see if this will change, is my favorite is Breaking Dawn, down to New Moon, Eclipse, and Twilight. That's my
Mm.
1 through 4.
Almost
So
reverse order.
yeah, almost reverse order. I'm looking forward to seeing how, like I said, I have a hard time differentiating New Moon and Eclipse because I
Mm.
read one after the other. I finished New Moon like early in the day, and so I picked up Eclipse and I just kept reading that book until I fell asleep. So
Find
yeah.
it.
Because like I said, I picked up Eclipse, found out that there were two other books, was pissed. Picked up those two books, expected Eclipse to be the last book, got to the end, because Stephanie Meyer does this thing where at the end of her books, she puts an excerpt from the next book, which is a nice little preview. But Eclipse had just come out, therefore Breaking Dawn wasn't gonna be out anytime soon. And
Mm.
as also someone who was an avid Harry Potter reader, I was used to waiting and I was pissed that I had to wait because I said I'd never waited for a book again. So I got to the end and I saw that there, when you're like reading a book and you're dwindling down, you're like, this isn't coming to a conclusion. This isn't coming to a conclusion. I hate
Yeah.
this. I hate this. I hate this. I
Yup,
thought this
yup,
was the
yup.
last one. And then you reach the end and it's like, exit from next book. You're like, ah! And that was me. That was me. But yeah, so that's my rating of the book.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Um, so we talked about my expectations for the book and like essentially what are you looking forward to from me reading it aside from like obviously these questions you asked me? Is there anything in particular like uh like are you wait like I imagine you might have some things tabbed in books and be like, I really need to make sure that I talk to Knilly about this thing specifically when we read it. Like, do you have any of that? Like,
Um, there's definitely some things. Again, I remember some things more from the movie than I do the books, but they're fairly
mhm,
the same in story beats at least.
mhm,
I There's a lot of things in Breaking Dawn I'm looking forward to talking to you about because there's a lot more interesting things that happen as we'll talk about it later on.
yeah,
But a lot of characters are very interesting in this book series. I'm looking forward to New Moon. There's some Stephanie Meyer. In my opinion, New Moon is one of Stephanie Meyer's best written books because she just did some things that were like kind of blew my mind as a kid.
mm,
So I'm excited to talk about some things in New Moon. In Twilight, there's a couple of scenes that I think more of in the context of the movie than I do the book that
mm,
I'm looking forward to finding out. There's because like especially after you've told me that you place yourself in the place of the protagonist, because as you'll find out, I'll give you this free spoiler that Bella is Stephanie Meyer's self-insert character.
mhm,
So a lot of the book it's why people think she has such a dry personality in not only the books but also the movies because it's meant to be a character you place yourself into and
yeah,
also do a little bit of the legwork on figuring out what, they're thinking or whatever, but obviously they think more in the book than they do in the movies.
mhm,
So, I'm looking forward to now some scenes I wasn't looking forward to before now that you've said that,
yeah,
especially in Twilight, in the first book, I should say. Um, yeah, there's some moments when, they go out of the school that I'm looking forward to. Um, I'm looking forward to I wanna see your reaction to meeting some of the characters, 'cause some of
mm,
the characters have become my favorite after the fact, and there's
mm,
one of the characters I love the character, but I hated, straight up abhorred the character for the first 2.5 books, and I didn't start to like them until 3rd to 4th book, so I'm looking forward to seeing your opinion there, and also just having a discussion about, um as you said in New Moon, there's a lot of interesting lore things that happen in New Moon, so I'm looking forward to discussing them. To not give any spoilers, to be as, vague as
mhm,
possible. There's some
yeah,
things
yeah,
in New Moon that I'm looking forward to discussing. And like I said, in Eclipse, not much that I can remember, because to me, New Moon and Eclipse are the same book.
yeah,
Um, but no, yeah, I'm looking forward to the plot moments, the twists that happen in the books. I'm looking forward to seeing your reaction. I'm looking forward to talking on certain episodes. I'm just like, oh, it's coming. Because like for me, like I said, Twilight is my least favorite, but because it's like the exposition book, it's where you set up everything. And since I already know everything, I'm just
yeah,
like when I was like, as you guys can see, I have everything tabbed. I went through and I figured out um what chapters we were gonna be reading. And I was like, wow, we really have to wait until this tab to like get to the story of the book. Which is why I was surprised in spoiler alert in that link that I read. They placed Twilight as like their number one. I'm just like, fam, Twilight? That's your favorite book of the four?
out of the 4. Um, cool. So, one of the things before we get into like some of like the what everyone can expect coming into this, I meant to switch to my so I got the Kindle version, and
Yeah.
this is like the cover that they give you. They give you like, oh, it's all the books on a shelf or whatever, right? It's probably
Oh
backwards, but
yeah.
it's fine. It's very cute. So Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn. Now, something that I think we are planning on incorporating at the end of this, there is Life and Death, as well as Midnight Sun, and then there is the short second life of Bree Tanner
Yes.
as extra books.
Yes.
Have you read any of these?
No. I stopped reading
Okay.
at Breaking Dawn. I was in college when some of these came out, and then I was a young adult. So they were not on my radar. I didn't even know I had heard. So here's the thing about Midnight Sun. Like a lot of authors that are still writing, there was a leaked version of Midnight Sun that came out years ago, like years after, a couple of years after Breaking Dawn came out. There were rumors that Midnight Sun was out, and then there is a leaked copy that was out there for Midnight Sun. but I don't like reading leaked anything. I'd rather read what the artist or in this case, the author has created. Like, I want to see their final version, their vision. That's kind of the point of reading for me. I don't really care about
Mhm.
the spoilers. I just want to see what they want me to read. So I never read it. And then Stephanie Meyer was very upset at Spaghetti that it got leaked. And so she said she canceled it as like a punishment essentially. So I thought it just was never going to come out. It was a huge shock to
Mm.
me that that book came out. I was like,
Ah,
Midnight Sun is out because it's the same name it existed before as. The Short Life
yeah.
of Bree Tanner. I had to go back and figure out what character that is. As like I said, this will be something we talk about. I think at the end of Twilight, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But a lot of
Mhm.
characters in the Twilight series are much more interesting than our protagonists. And because it is like very much self-insert, like the main characters are not the flavor of the story.
Yeah.
You and Stephanie Meyer loves to just drop this very interesting character into the story, and then you'll never see them again. We'll
I
never
hate
talk about
that.
them ever
I hate
again.
that so much.
And I've heard that in the illustrated guide. She goes way more into detail about all these interesting characters, which makes you a little bit more upsetty spaghetti at Stephanie Meyer for not adding that to the book. But you know, it is what it is. So I had
Yeah.
to go back and see who Bree Tanner was because they are one of those characters that kind of was just like came and went. So I'm
Mm.
looking forward to reading that one because I don't know what Stephanie Meyer would want to add to that character, like to
Yeah.
tell us, like I said, to tell us as the reader. Um, and what was the other one? Life and Death. I have no idea what that book is. I have
Yeah.
no clue.
So here's a quick thing. So in 2010 was the short Second Life of Bree Tanner, and it's novella. So it's a short
Okay.
one. So that'll
Yeah.
be a really quick short read. Honestly, by the time. So that came out in 2010. So that was actually the first of these three after the original Twilight run.
Yeah.
And then in 2016 was Life and Death. The full title is Life and Death Twilight Reimagined, the Twilight Saga. I believe it is just uh so here's the summary. For the fans of the worldwide phenomenon, Twilight comes a bold reimagining of Stephanie Meyer's novel, telling the classic love story, but in a world where the characters' genders are reversed. We might skip this
Oh.
one. We might skip this one and do Midnight Sun, or we'll do this one separately. I don't know how long this is though, but this came out in 2016.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So it's like, Bella and Edward, now get to know Bo and Edith.
I've heard a little bit about it. Now that you say that,
Yeah.
yes, I
Yeah.
remember this gender, which also was a huge rumor in the fandom for a while.
Mm.
Because Stephanie Meyer used to talk a lot to the fans back in the day, back in the
Mm.
forum days,
Mhm.
and she used to like drop excerpts of books and stuff. And yeah,
Yeah.
had no idea. Completely, I think I knew about the short life of Brie Tanner, but I think I was told it like don't even bother, so I didn't.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think we should read Midnight Sun first because Midnight Sun
Yeah.
is the perspective of Edward throughout the series, or at least
Yeah.
throughout the first book or so.
Yeah, and this one came out in 2020, so this is the most recent of her books.
Yes.
Aside from other rumored things that we're not going to get into on this series of the podcast, but as of note, she's still writing stuff. Maybe,
Yes.
maybe question mark. Um, so these three books, or 2 to 3 books that we'll add to this nearing the end of the Twilight stuff, will be fresh reads for both of us. So that should be
Yes.
fun.
Yeah.
Um, but they are all not main plot stuff, and they're all like tangential stories or perspectives. So in terms of like zeitgeist, they're not really even like the core stuff, but more Stephanie Meyer stuff. And I got the whole thing on this ebook deal, so I got them.
Nice.
So, um, yeah. All right. So, shall we get into how this is going to work for the next few weeks?
Yes.
Um, so this is gonna be a weekly podcast. We're gonna be streaming it live on. BB, are you also gonna co-stream it?
Oh, well, we'll talk about it.
Okay, we'll talk about it. It's definitely gonna be on my channel,
Mhm.
twitch.tv/KnillyLine. Um, we'll have more links, and maybe we'll make some better links and stuff when we organize it, because we're just got this is like off the cuff, right? We're just we're flying by the seat of our pants when we're doing this. The only thing we have planned is our weekly chapters and what we're covering.
Yes.
um we'll add in like either the description of this thing on whatever YouTube we make, or a little like link tree or something. We'll post our schedule, so if you'd like to read along with us, you can. But essentially, for the first date of September 7th, we're going to be reading chapters 1 through 3. I'll also probably end up, there's a preface that's like 3 paragraphs. So anything like up until chapter 3 is what we'll be reading of Twilight, book one. Because it's
Yes.
all just called Twilight. I love that the whole like series is just called Twilight, but like, is there like another name for, like, is it Twilight, Breaking Dawn, Twilight, whatever? I wonder if you only expected to write one book. um, but yeah, essentially from there, PB looks like you scheduled is just 3 chapters every week. So the only thing is that middle of October we might skip a week because I have other engagements that might take I might have to travel for. But that will to be announced when we get a little bit closer to that, because I don't have full details yet on that.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add, PB?
I want to add that we are gonna have a time in the podcast where we answer your questions. So if you have any questions, make sure to drop them over in Knilly Online's Discord. There's a whole K&P podcast section where we have an AMA Ask Us Anything in the chat. Um, so make sure you drop by there. Right now, we actually have one question from one of Knilly's mods, and Derek
I love
asked,
Derek.
yeah, Derek asks us, just how excited is PB to get Knilly to read these books? And I have been waiting. It's been almost an entire year
It
since
has almost been an entire year.
I've discussed this with Knilly, when I was just like, Knilly sent me a message on Twilight or on TikTok saying like, I don't really understand these, but I still think they're funny, to one of my TikToks that I sent her about Twilight. And I was like, what? And we had just recently been talking about reading. And I was like, Nilly, you have to read these books. Like, you have to read these. And she's like, no. And I'm like, but what if you do? She's like, no. And I'm like, what if we read it together? And she's like, no. Okay, what if I find a way for us to make content out of us reading these books? She was like, okay, I'm listening. And so,
It wasn't like fully that. I would read it with you, but I think it's just like I need a little bit more. I don't read as leisurely as I do lately. So now there has to be like a purpose,
yeah,
which sucks. Which
exactly.
is a shitty thing to say. I do want to read more personally. Like the most I've read are other freaking TTRPG manuals, and that's not like entirely fiction. There's fiction, but it's like it's also an instruction manual on how to play a game. So like take that with what you will. There's some lovely content in those books, but I wouldn't say it's like I haven't read like a novel in a while. So
Yeah.
like it's hard for me to make time and for that with A, we're all busy people, and also B, my neur my brain just needs something like to attach something with it to like, okay, this will be this goes together and it'll be great. Because then I can do two things at once. I'm someone who enjoys making something a multitask.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Which is, so I have been waiting very patiently over the past year for us to
Evie
get
has been
around to
very
doing this.
patient.
And so now I am just very excited. I have a collection on TikTok of a bunch of Twilight TikToks to send Nilly as we go through this. And I'm looking forward to sending her a bunch of memes that I've just been collecting over the past year. So very excited to answer your question, Derek. Very,
Yeah.
very excited.
We should probably also make a meme channel, then you can share them with everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have the link to the Discord also in like the description of the podcast. It's also discord.nilly.live, and all you gotta do is just accept the rules. Yeah. Um, we'll have a YouTube link soon, and if you're watching this, you're probably already on the YouTube because we shared it around. But if you could also just hit that like and subscribe so we can get that URL, baby.
Yeah.
Wow, I get to legitimately say hit that bell. That's
You
weird.
sure did.
I didn't.
Once
I
a
don't
week,
need to
guys.
mean that.
Once
Subscribe
a
and like.
Otherwise it'll get lost in the feed because we're not going to be releasing a lot of content. It's just once a week.
Yeah.
you'll get this
once a
podcast. So
week.
make sure to hit that the little notification bell so you know when it's coming out.
Yeah.
And
And we're
if not,
live. Go
mhm.
ahead.
I was gonna say if not, go to the twitch.tv/KnillyLine and that's where you'll get it live.
Yeah.
Uh
We'll be live Wednesdays at 7 p.m. EST, 6:30 p.m. EST, something like that. Scheduled to
and
come out for real.
and it'll be about 45 minutes to an hour long, depending
Yeah.
on how spicy the series of chapters we're reading are.
Yeah.
So again, read along with us so you can ask us some questions and you don't have to be afraid of spoilers if you read along with us.
Yeah. And also read it if you've read it before, read it with us. If you haven't read it, be like me and be pleasantly surprised or aghast or scared or sad or angry. Go through the emotions with me. It's like,
Please.
All right. Yeah. So with that, this was like first impressions and questions, and we're gonna sign off for the evening,
Yeah. Thank
or
you guys
time
so
zone,
much.
whatever your time zone is.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the K&P podcast about Twilight. And
We'll see you on the internet.
yeah, bye guys.
Bye.